Hi, and welcome to the ASUG News Studio. My name is Tom Whalegum. I'm the editorial director of ASUGnews.com. We are starting off this morning, Monday morning, with two great guests, two wonderful observers of SAP, longtime watchers, scrutinizers, industry analysts. John Reed of johnerp.com. Welcome to the studio.
Pleasure.
And Ray Wang of Constellation Research. He's the CEO. And principal analyst. Anything else? Any other titles you'd like to mention?
That's
no,
it.
that's
Thanks,
good
Tom.
enough. Well, thanks, gentlemen, for coming in. As we get started here, the theme, I guess, of this event is the 5 pillars that SAP is now basing its strategy around. We have the business suite, analytics, which I'd say they're doing fairly well in, and now we have these emerging database, mobility, and cloud themes. John, maybe we'll start with you. What do you think about this new strategy? It's an extension of the on-demand, on-premise, and now in memory, but do you think customers could possibly get overwhelmed by this?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, even when you just look at mobility alone, there's all kinds of questions around technology and platform, and now you've acquired Cyclo, and you think you know what that means, but you're not sure. I was at an ASUG session with customers just asking tons of questions about that. So,
what were they asking about in that session?
Well, there was just a lot of questions around basically, okay, if I want to build a mobile app, how can SAP help me to do that? And if I want to buy one, how can I do that? And what platform requirements are there? What are the dependencies? And with SAP, there's always dependencies, right? So it's like, oh, you got to be on ERP 6.0, CRM 701. Oh, you got to have DOE. Oh, what is DOE? I thought NetWeaver Mobile was dead. Oh, NetWeaver Mobile, well, it is dead, but DOE, you know, so you get the idea. And that's because mobility is a new space, and SAP's trying to make hay there. The fact of the matter is that most SAP customers are, you know, in the core ERP suite are thinking about ERP issues still. But they care about these other plays too, so the challenge for SAP is to tie it into a coherent picture, and I'm not sure if they've done that yet, but maybe Ray thinks they have. I don't know.
Great segue. I would say if you think about the 5 forces of consumerization, right? It's social, mobile, cloud, analytics, and unified communications. That's not an area where SAP is going to be, but social, mobile, cloud, this is where people want to go. Yep. Back to your point, John, ERP customers aren't there yet, which is really the struggle. But the question is, if you want to grow the company and you want to make that next transformation, you have to make these investments. Yep. And so we're seeing SAP acquire their way into there. I mean, the real question is, what will they acquire for social? So.
One thing too, we're seeing these emerging database wars with Oracle. This stuff's getting a little nasty. Fun for us observers. Ray, you just recently wrote a report on HANA. What's some of the things that you would tell ASUG members who are looking at this now, approaching it and thinking, how does this mesh with my long-term database strategy? Do I even want to think about SAP in that database strategy context?
That's a great question. What they're doing with HANA is the right direction for SAP, right? Because when you move to the cloud, you don't care what database you're on, really, right? But the second thing is that customers are paying a huge tax on database, right? For maintenance, for disaster recovery, for all the things that you're really using just accessing information. The question is HANA ready for being able to support an ERP instance? Are you going to be able to run that? And at this point, we don't think so.
I can answer that question. Yeah, it's not ready yet.
It's not ready?
No.
But is it ready to take out BW as a store? Yeah, probably. What you could do is put it there, but there's still a lot more work to do to get there. Right. But so conceptually, I think it's the right direction, but I think there's a good tad of forward marketing at the moment.
Yes, well, SAP is known for its marketing bravado, and that'll be on display, I think, this week. Do you think, I mean, let's talk about last year. Sapphire 2011 was the HANA onslaught, or I mean, it was just all HANA. Do you think that the messaging will change a little bit because of customers are like, okay, you know, we've heard it, and you know, it's not like people are rushing out to buy HANA. I mean, not in huge numbers, although SAP would say the pipeline. What do you think, John? Do you think this year we're going to hear more about HANA, or the complementary other
We're going to hear quite a lot about HANA. When you talked about your 5 go-to-market themes, the reason that HANA isn't in there is because SAP sees HANA kind of everywhere, right? Analytics, but also moving towards operational and ERP. So yeah, we're going to hear about HANA. But I do think, having talked with a lot of SAP executives and had heated debates about this, that I think we are going to see some shift from around speed and just, oh, HANA is fast, to taking a little bit more closer look at what customers are doing with HANA in a business context, right? And that's really one of SAP's big challenges right now, is to move out of the technology weeds and to explain how they're solving business problems. And one of the issues there is can they engage partners who historically have been much better at that than SAP and bring them into this picture? And there's been a lot of mixed messages around there, which I think you've touched on as well. So
Yeah, I mean, if we have to hear one more story about Nongfu Springs and their HANA, we've heard that quite a bit. It needs to be more the business value.
You do, and I think they really need to get to some use cases for HANA, like get down to specific things. I mean, the beauty of HANA is if it works, it's a cost savings play that allows you innovation, right? And so that's what the promise is. That message is not coming clear.
Okay.
It's like, hey, it's faster. Hey, you can do all these cool calculations. I think they've got to weave back in how am I going to save some money with it.
Right.
The problem is the deal size isn't going to go down, and the total selling price isn't going to go down, your contract value isn't going to go down,
Right.
and that's why the customers are a little bit scared.
But
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Well, I was just going to say, remember that you can't really talk TCO until you can really be confident that you can run systems of record on HANA, because once you can do that, then you can start canceling database contracts
Yep.
and doing these things that will deliver on that. But unfortunately, I don't think we're quite there yet. But
Yeah, I mean, if you can cancel a database contract, there's huge amounts of money being saved.
Do you think, though, SAP, I mean, engaging with Oracle in the database wars now, when it's very premature, is a distraction to their customers? That people think, wait, there's no way I'm going to start messing with my Oracle databases now. Let's say they're running that, and yet SAP's out there engaging them verbally. I mean, I don't want to think about that right now. Could that come back to bite SAP if they made the promises, we want to be number 2 database vendor by 2050. I mean, can that come back and hurt them?
I think they've retracted on that statement of trying to be the number 2 database vendor by 2015,
Right.
but I would say that it's not the right time to engage in a war till you've got the proof points.
Right.
So,
I will tell you that I think customers find vendor wars to be a real turnoff.
Yeah.
It's kind of a fear, uncertainty, and doubt syndrome, and people really don't appreciate that. At the same time, I do think there is some, when vendors do this, part of what they're trying to do is they're trying to let their install base know, hey, when you're thinking about roadmap, we want to be on your roadmap, we want to be taken into consideration. And so that's why all these vendors, including SAP, but not only SAP, do this all the time, where they say, hey, we do have solutions in this area, so
Right.
don't think about going off the grid because we're going to be here. And
Right.
yeah, and we just did a survey on what ERP customers want. It's an updated survey, and what's interesting is that we're experiencing this bipolar disorder, right? On one hand, the IT side wants cost savings, make it easy to own, drive down maintenance. The business side is going, hey, I want BI, I want mobile, right? I want to be in the cloud. And so we're seeing like this dichotomy going on, but the basic reason is IT budgets are down 5% year over year, tech spending is up 20%. Business side's buying.
Yep.
Well, and I think you make a really important point, because when I talk with SAP customers, I'm continually shocked by how much time they spend on testing, support, maintenance. This is one of the underreported stories that we're not going to talk about that much this week because it's all about sexy cloud and mobile.
Right.
But customers struggle with this, and when you talk to IT managers, they're frustrated because they have this wish list of business projects and they can't knock enough of them off to stay relevant because they're busy maintaining their environments all the time.
Yeah,
Right.
SAP
So-
optimization is hot. I mean,
Yep.
any way you can cut costs, whether it's archiving, storage, testing. I mean, those are all areas that have been
Yep.
just a lot of interest.
Right. John, the other thing you've been following, I know closely, is the whole mobility and developer ecosystem.
Yeah.
How's SAP doing with this, and what do they need to do to really welcome those developers in?
Okay, well, we've been banging, a lot of us, on this issue for years now. Dennis Hallett was the first, but there's a bunch of us that have been saying, you need to engage developers, and part of that is because enterprise needs are changing, and we see the future of enterprise, a lot of us, as platform plays, and without apps, you got to have apps, right? You got people have to want to develop on your platform. And I do think SAP is starting to get this when it comes to mobile, and one of the surprises for Sapphire, those Sapphire watchers out there, check out Vishal Sikka's keynote on Wednesday, because I think there's going to be some interesting stuff. SAP is listening around this issue because they've realized that their business model depends on it. So they are making some progress, but when you look at building apps on an SAP platform, you look at friction all over the place. Friction with licensing, friction with IP, friction with where's my app store, or maybe there's 5 app stores, how do we get one? How do I buy it? How do I install it? There's friction all over the place, but I do think SAP is working on making the barriers to entry easier, and they're doing mobile, but we're going to hear stuff about HANA as well, and ultimately they have to find a way to make it appealing for these developers who are, because they need the cool developers, the ones who can build iPhone apps and iPad apps, and they're not really working in SAP environments yet.
Yeah, they're not going to go with hybrid.
Right.
That's just not going to fly. They're going to want working native or HTML5, and that's been the big issue. Using PhoneGap helps. It gives them enough of an ecosystem,
Right.
but a 15% cut isn't enough in the sense of, from an SAP side, what they really want is to know that there's going to be easy to build, easy to own, easy to swap out. So.
And that goes for customers as well. I mean, customers want to be able to build their own apps in some cases, and they want to be able to procure them easily. And You know, we're going to hear a little bit about that this week. I'll be interested to hear how much, because this is more of a business conference, but I think apps matter to business users. We'll find out.
Well, customers are clearly need help. Bridget in her keynote this morning, she always likes to ask the crowd, how many of you got mobility figured out? I mean, like 2 hands go up, right? And like one of them's a partner who does mobility. So clearly customers are obviously seeing what we're all seeing, the demand from, but to make all the connections work, that's the hard part, right? But isn't that what the Sybase purchase was all about?
Sybase purchase was multiple things, but if you take the Sybase route, right, you're going to go after building the complete solution, getting everything right all at once, and customers aren't ready for that. They want things in chunks. They want entry points into mobility, and so for some of them, that's just way too expensive an approach. So if someone comes in and says, hey, it's $25 million to get onto mobility.
Right.
No, I don't want to
we'll
do
stick
that.
With our
I'll make this work on Windows Phone 8. I don't know.
Right.
That's the last thing they want to do. But hey, if you can enable my stuff on a mobile device, you can make my UI show up on an iPad, I'm happy.
Right.
So I don't need that full infrastructure yet.
Okay.
Even though it's the right thing to do, even though it's the right engineering.
Okay.
Well, the problem is you can't just take ERP transactions and throw them on a mobile device and hope that users are going to use this stuff. You've written a lot about this from the consumerization angle, but the mobile thing is a different modeling environment to create a good mobile app, and the learning curve for customers is steep there, in my opinion. Not so much around the development skills technically, but more about how do we deliver apps that our users are going to benefit from and deliver on this promise, because there's the promise of mobility, but where's the reality? I think everyone's trying to figure that out, not just SAP, but customers as well.
Yeah, you can't just reskin it and put it on a mobile device. It's a different flow.
Right.
And you also want to break down the functionality in a way that you're not going to use everything. Give me the key 10 things that I can do out of the thousands, and that's really what I want in a flow in a mobile.
Right. My last question for you guys is, I was on the flight down, I was reading a New Yorker profile of Clayton Christensen about the innovator's dilemma and about companies, the famous example he uses about steel companies who didn't adopt this, they didn't disrupt themselves, essentially. That's his thing. SAP's 40 years old now. Have they done enough, in your opinion, to disrupt themselves to secure a future? Clearly, HANA and these things, they've tried, they've given some effort. They could have just been, we're the ERP king and maybe we'll do analytics. But I'm wondering, in your thoughts, both of you, have you done enough to disrupt themselves?
I would say they're doing more than people in their competition. So in their peer group, they're actually doing very well. I think they learned the lesson that they weren't able to do this organically, and so they've gone out and done the acquisitions to get there. And I think you can see it in the share price, you can see it in what they're doing in terms of integrating some of these technologies. The challenge is executing on this. This isn't easy stuff to do, and they've got to disrupt themselves organizationally to be able to get there, and I don't think they're there yet.
In some ways, there's an enormous advantage to being a new vendor because you can build from the ground up with better technology and business models that match today's environment for agile and cloud and stuff. Incumbent vendors like SAP have a big challenge because they have this history they have to overcome in a legacy install base. And so for me, what I look for from SAP is to feel a culture of urgency around changing. And I think they have a culture issue there they need to address, because the leadership of SAP, when you talk with them, a lot of them you're like, wow, they really get that. Right. So, but then you say, where are the disconnects? And that's where the question gets interesting. And to me, that's a challenge for SAP, and that's the debate we all have, is how quickly do they have to make these moves in order to stay relevant? And we could debate that for the next half hour, and we don't have time.
And the good news is actually labs is actually where you're seeing a lot of the innovation. So not necessarily in the core teams, but you're seeing a lot of the edges happen out in like Shanghai or Tel Aviv or Bangalore or in Palo Alto. They're pushing ahead. So,
well, I think a good litmus test will be success factors, and see how that kind of rolls into and how Lars does, and we'll see him this week on Tuesday, I guess.
Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to Lars charging onto the stage on Tuesday and seeing what he has to say. I have seen him speak at a private SAP event, but I'm really looking forward to seeing how he does in public, because he definitely brings a different style, let's just say that.
Yeah.
Well, Lars loves technology, so.
Yes. Well, gentlemen, thank you very much for being here. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Enjoyed it, Tom.
All right. Thanks. Up next, we were having another discussion here in the ASUG News Studio, so come back in about 10 minutes.